When looking to communicate with your audience, there are different ways that people communicate, and actually, these all have different strengths, benefits, weaknesses. And it's an important part of any business course to really kind of share this knowledge about how best to communicate with your audience to basically have the biggest impact we can. So there's different data on this which actually says similar things, but essentially only 7% of the total amount of communication that we give to people is in the words that we choose. So this is often where the written word can be brilliant, but it also can cause problems that I've seen it many times, where in an email which was sent to someone else, which essentially is just the text that people read from the page, often it can be misinterpreted that a much better way to communicate with someone on the other side is that you have the written word and the words that we choose, but actually your tone of voice, what it sounds like, how it comes out of your mouth, is actually 38% of the total amount of communication, which is when we're trying to communicate with people and get a message across, makes a massive difference. In a business context, I believe it's really important that when you can, if you can pick up the telephone and have a conversation with someone, for one, if you can tell that the person on the other end is not well receiving of what you're trying to say, you can change tact and change actually what you say. But actually, through better communication, when people can understand your tone and they can hear your tone of voice, they might be able to tell that it's funny or jokey or caring or compassionate or angry. And based on that, they can react accordingly, as where in the written word alone, we'd lose the ability to communicate all of that extra information. But actually, an incredible 55% of communication is actually in the visuals and body language. Part of the reason why, in my opinion, it's so much better to meet in person if you can, is that you get to see and absorb what people look like, feel like, what they do with their hands, how they're sat, if they're interested in you, if they're not. And all of these non-verbals are really important when you're trying to communicate a message. In a digital world now, and part of the reason why this is a video element of the course as well as all of the written stuff, is that hopefully you get to learn a bit more about me and almost why we're trying to communicate different things, that actually never forget the importance of video and using everything you can as a way to communicate with your audience. Often many people don't like to put themselves on camera, and I do understand that. But if you're trying to build a genuine connection with your audience, it's a great way to do that. And what I want you to do is almost just understand all of the tools that you can use to help you have the biggest impact. But an important thing that I want to make sure that we share as part of this topic is that when you write things down in emails or otherwise, an incredible 56% of the time, people actually perceive it and they misunderstand what you mean to communicate with the message, which isn't great. So more than half the time when you message someone or email someone, they will misunderstand what you want to communicate. And from a leadership or management point of view, that's really important that half the time people are going to get it wrong. But also incredibly, of those times, 7 out of 10, 70% of the time, people perceive it as negative. So where this is really important is that if you are in a supplier negotiation or you're talking to a client, in person, you get to talk to them, they get to hear your tone of voice, you get to hear theirs, and you can actually communicate at 100% of the capacity and ability that you have to hopefully get your message across, but also to understand it from the other person. If you resort to emails alone, so just the words that you choose, there is a huge element of things that can go wrong. And actually the data says that often it will, that more than half the time, people will misunderstand what you're trying to say. And when they misunderstand it, 7 out of 10 times, they will actually perceive it as negative. So as a really important tip, when you're looking at your corporate and marketing communications, and even how you communicate with your team, if you can, use all of the tools that are available to you, either in person so that people can hear your tone of voice, but ideally see your body language, see and learn about how you are trying to communicate and what you're trying to say. But also, if you work in a global business, a video call or corporate video where people can see you and hear your tone of voice will actually help you communicate your vision and your mission and your everything that you want to say so much better than if you stick to the written word alone.